Going to kick off? Okay. So yeah, let's kick off today's session. So we are Pamela and Minou. We're the founders of the Green Sprint and the initiators of these sustainability sessions. And with the Green Sprint, we aim to accelerate to the new economy by helping organizations and startups with strategy and innovation processes and the creation and development of new models, processes, and products. And our overall goal is to help organizations and individuals to climb the sustainability ladder. And this is also why we are hosting these monthly sustainability sessions. Because the purpose of these sustainability sessions is to enable and activate individuals and people to take action on sustainability, either within their organization or on their own. And we want to give you tools and insight, methods, and knowledge that can help you to accelerate the sustainable transition. And every month we invite experts to every session, covering a wide range of topics, from like the circular economy to sustainable marketing, CSR reporting, and regenerative agriculture. And today we will dive into the topic of circularity, because globally the increase in economic development while expanding our ecological footprint is simply not sustainable. And around the globe, we're seeing a growing movement towards the circular economy. And the aim of the circular economy is to keep products and materials at a maximum value for as long as possible. And a number of trends, luckily, is supporting this shift to circularity. And a great example of this combination between digital technology, network, and more efficient collaborations across the complete value chain, which makes it easier to track and recover products, is PackBack. And that is exactly who we invited here today, because our guest speaker of today is Stine Bakja. She did exactly this with her startup, PackBack, and they are using smart technology to build efficient, transparent, and circular systems within value chains of the food and beverage industry. And I would like now to give the floor to Pamela, who will kick off today's conversation with Tina. And if you, at any point you want to ask something, comment on something, drop a curveball into the conversation, or just explore a topic we're discussing a bit deeper, please just drop any comments or questions in the chat, or raise your hand with the raise your hand button so you can come on mic and participate in the conversation. And then I want to give the floor to Pam now. Pamela, go ahead.
Yay. Awesome. Yeah, I'm really excited to have Tina with us today. And I think Minou gave a wonderful introduction of the circular economy and of PackBack as well. But of course, we'd like to hear from Tina yourself. So if you can introduce yourself and why you started PackBack in the first place.
Yes, definitely. Thanks. And also thanks everyone for being here and being interested in hearing our story. I think it's really awesome, and we'd love to chat with you during this session, and of course also after that. So indeed, we are from PackBack, and what PackBack essentially is a network that allows food and drink packaging to be reused in an efficient way. I myself have a background also in the food business. So during my studies, I had this social food startup, which was called Baking Power, in which I made sort of healthy bakery products together with women that have been a victim of human trafficking. And I sold those muffins in Amsterdam to like coffee company and, like coffee stores and stuff. And during that process, a very important component was the packaging of those products. And by then, I actually thought that just biodegradable single-use materials were the most sustainable. So I actually used that. And then fast forward a few years later, I was working in business development at Foodora, which is like a food delivery company like Thuisbezorgd or Deliveroo. And that question popped up again. Packaging. How can it be sustainable, but also affordable? And how can we really introduce a packaging that is not contributing to the large amount of waste? And during that sort of question that was raised to me, I started studying packaging again and figuring out if there were any updates in the market. And during that study, I also talked to KIDV, which is a Knowledge Institute Sustainable Packaging. And they actually told me that all those nice brown eco sort of looking packaging all ended up incinerated, or at least a large part of it. And I thought that was so crazy, especially for a market where packaging only serves as purpose for like 30 minutes. So actually pretty randomly, I was just talking to one of the restaurants I was working with and telling him about this. And then I just randomly pretty said like, if we're sharing bikes nowadays, if we're sharing cars nowadays, why can't we just share packaging? And that is quite literally how, together with restaurants, we came up with the idea then called shared packaging, and started working on how we could design a system in which packaging can be reused, so we could actually avoid those large amounts of waste during food delivery. And that's basically why and how it started.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. I love that you said you're working for Foodora and that you got started to the restaurants, because that was something that I was wondering about. When you start talking to people about circular economy or this concept, it's just such a big mindset shift often. So it's really interesting that you got a few restaurants involved pretty quickly. So did they recognize the problem themselves as well, or did they just have the right mindset?
100%. And I was actually talking to two of my sort of clients at Foodora. And those were pretty sustainable companies. So one was a vegan restaurant, one was a restaurant really focused on local food. And they actually recognized that problem. And they actually said that they find it such a waste, no pun intended, that they offer such sustainable meals in terms of where the food is coming from and how it is processed, but then they deliver it in a very wasteful packaging. So they actually thought that that was really not aligned with their whole business. So they actually were very interested in exploring this idea further. And then really, literally together with the restaurant, we sketched out what the system could look like.
Yeah, that's amazing. So I remember yesterday I posted the link to our session today. And I remember this from hearing you speak, like, I think a year ago, or maybe more, even more. And I actually wrote like it's a consumer restaurant kind of mechanism. And you correctly, rightfully so, corrected me on my post saying you're now serving the entire value chain. So can you take us a bit through that timeline? So how, you started with the restaurants and the consumers, and then how did that evolve into where you are now?
Yeah, so we officially started off being the whole chain in the sense that we were purchasing packaging, which we had a whole like packaging experiment, a study to figure out the right reusable packaging. I see one link popping up. That is the old concept that we started with. I'll drop the new one. And we started off essentially being the whole chain. So purchasing the right reusable packaging, distributing it among restaurants, picking it up, cleaning it, and then returning the packaging back to the restaurants. And during that process, we figured out that it was, at least we faced some challenges. So we figured out that the reverse logistics were very costly, not only in terms of setup costs, but also in terms of operational costs. Also that in terms of impact, it was important to keep things locally, but that would make it difficult to scale the concept. And then we were just thinking about, instead of trying to be the whole system, why can't we partner with the whole ecosystem instead of just trying to be the whole ecosystem? So we actually started figuring out that if we plugged in multiple reusable packaging suppliers that could offer a multitude of restaurants and having access to multiple reverse logistics options, that the system would be a lot more efficient. We could actually share infrastructure, not only the digital one in which we can all trace packaging and be on this one sort of network, but also in terms of reverse logistics. So share transport, not only in impact, but also in costs, share washing facilities. So this idea of creating this network sort of arose. And then we were approached by a lot of other reusable concepts saying, hey, I have this idea or I have this reusable packaging and I want to get started, but how do I start? And then we just started plugging everyone into this sort of network and plugging different players into the network, really collaborating on one infrastructure, basically.
So how does that, just from a consumer perspective, I'm going to play a little bit of the blondie here. So I'm a consumer, and then what do? I go to your app. I see it's packback.app. So I'm assuming I download an app.
No.
And then what happens? No, I don't download an app. Okay.
You don't have to. Yeah, it's a web application on purpose. So just a side note, because we were sort of, I think everyone's a bit app fatigued that you have to download everything to use something. So it's just a website functioning or looking like an app. Yeah.
Okay. So I become a customer with you guys, or I just use it on Foodora or something else?
There are different options. So we especially made it open for people to interact with it in different ways. So what you can do is add it to the delivery menu, for example, as a restaurant. So a lot of restaurants have that. Then a deposit is charged during the delivery process. Then you receive the packaging, reusable packaging. You scan the QR code that's on the container. It tells you where and how you can hand in the packaging. And once you do, it gets collected either by the restaurant itself or an external party that does the transport and washing. When it's collected, you basically get your deposit back in the virtual wallet in the application.
Wow, okay. So yeah, I heard you say reverse logistics. And I think that for a lot of people is the complicated piece of the puzzle there. Like you can pick up your packaging, but how does that reverse logistic work? So how does that work for you guys? Do you have like drop-off points or do you...
Yeah, so we have universal drop-off points in which a consumer can hand in all different reusable packaging that are circulating on the network. So it's a sort of modular box in which you can hand in, for example, the Billy Cup coffee cups. You can hand in the bowls of another one. You can hand in the reduce boxes from a supplier in Belgium. And there you can just hand it in, and it's at participating restaurants, but also at other consumer retail locations that just find it interesting to have more traffic to the shop.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So just in retail, it's really interesting. And then someone picks it up, and then they go to washing, and then it returns to the different restaurants that are participating, if I understand.
Exactly. And you have the sort of basic version because some restaurants find it okay to just clean the packaging themselves and redistribute them. But others pay a premium and then they can use a electric transport vehicle, basically, that is then that facilitates the picking up of the packaging and cleaning, and then it gets redistributed to them.
Right. So I feel, okay, Alex is asking a question in the comments. Are wildly those drop-off boxes are distributed? I'm not really sure I understand the question correctly. Alex, would you mind coming on mic and asking the question yourself?
Hello, Pamela, and the rest. Sorry, how widely immense of local, sort of geographically distributed?
Ah, sorry. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, they are pretty concentrated based on where the restaurants are located. So basically, yeah, where most restaurants participating are located, that's where the reusable or the drop-off containers are, essentially.
And so you started in Rotterdam, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
How many restaurants are currently in your network?
We have now 30 restaurants in Rotterdam, and we have 15 in Belgium since the summer, which is when we started this past summer.
Oh, cool. Amazing. Yeah. So is it, because you mentioned you started with restaurants who recognize this problem, which makes sense. So the vegan and the sustainable restaurants. How is it now? Do you have to explain how it works, and do you have to really explain the concept of circularity and why it's important to get more restaurants on board?
Yes, so you have some more conscious restaurants that are also already pretty focused on material usage and food waste, and for those companies it's pretty clear how the system works and what the benefits are. But there are also some other companies that really find this a very new concept, and now all of a sudden they don't own packaging, but they're borrowing it, and how does that work? And some do find it a bit scary, but we definitely explained that for them, not a lot changes, actually. They still just get packaging and make sure that they ship it away. But it takes a whole new mindset. And now also it takes also some responsibility also with them in sort of promoting the whole reuse system to their consumers, and also explaining to their consumers that it is the point that they hand it in and return it back.
Yeah. Do you see more hurdles with them in your conversations with them, or are there like typical questions that they constantly ask you about how does this work or how does that work?
I think a lot of them are essentially just find it very awesome that now they have a container that is really firm and looks really cool versus like these soggy cardboard-like boxes. So most are really focused on that. But some essential questions are more so how it works for the consumer and how we ensure that it's user-friendly for them.
Yeah. And what would you normally reply for that? Like, you explain the whole concept and the system to them?
Yeah, definitely. And what we also do is we tell restaurants to give their employees some sort of budget to order packaging at one of our a meal at one of our participating restaurants, so they can actually experience it themselves as a consumer. So they can actually see how it works, how easy they can return it, how they can see what their impact is, how they can get their deposit back, all of that. So they actually become good ambassadors in explaining the concept.
Right. And so you said, okay, so you have the entire value chain now involved. So you serve the actual entire value chain. So who are your other stakeholders and clients then, apart from restaurants and consumers, and to business to consumer consumers, basically? So you have the packaging
distributor or producer,
designers, if you will, or the producers.
So we have a packaging producer. It can also be a distributor, so that sort of has the direct connection with the producer. We have a transport of electric vehicles, and then washing facilities.
Right. Okay. And your whole system, it's completely, I love it. It's completely closed off already. Do you still get a lot of people wanting to join the system?
Yeah, we actually do. Yeah, so we launched in Belgium with another distributor in January, a few weeks back, and we're also launching in Amsterdam in 2 months and in The Hague also. So that's really awesome.
Nice, nice. And we have Jennifer with us tonight as well. I'm not sure if you've already connected on LinkedIn, but she's the co-founder of Loopit, which is in Stockholm.
Exactly.
So I am actually kind of curious, Jennifer, do you recognize Tina's story, or is it different in your business?
Yeah, it is also like completely random. It's like Loopit actually started during my semester abroad here in Sweden. I'm from Germany originally, and in Germany we have several reuse systems, so it was very normal for me. And when I came here, no one used reuse systems. And I mean, I'm here in Sweden, which is like the largest coffee drinking country ever, and no one used that. And we then basically were in contact with with Recup in Germany, and wanted to bring Recup to Sweden because it was crazy. Like on campus, all the cafes on campus only have disposable cups. They don't even have porcelain cups that you can sit in. So you can imagine, like, if there are 10,000 students on campus, how wasteful this was every single day. And that was kind of the idea. But then we realized we need a digital system to actually develop it in Sweden, since everything is cash free here as well. And what we also realized is, in a way, that with Recup, for example, in Germany, then you don't really track the products. So you basically just put more products on the market, but you don't know how many are there. You can't track them in the surroundings. And this is what we want to do now. So we basically have also QR codes on our products, and you can like trace them and you can track them. You can see how many times every product has been reused. And this for like cups and boxes, and can be extended to everything. But to be able to track it is really, really important.
Yes. And on that end, I know, Tina, in your LinkedIn profile, you do mention, and I have an interest in this as well, you do mention that you work in blockchain as well. Is PackBack system on the blockchain or not?
Not yet. That is definitely my vision for the future, but not yet. Yeah, I work as a business designer also at Crya, and there I actually lead the conceptual development of a blockchain circular economy solution for the built environment. So I know that also from that background, my whole idea of sort of working together with value chains and having this sort of decentralized approach for growth and collaboration, I think definitely comes from that.
Yeah. Yeah, and the traceability, like Jennifer mentioned, is something as well that blockchain is perfect for it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so, at least. Okay, I'm really curious. So what you mentioned already the building environment. Are there any other sectors that you feel are very suitable for this type of circular system?
Yeah, I think e-commerce is also a very good one. So you have, for example, Reedpack, which actually designed reusable packaging for e-commerce. So I think that's definitely also an interesting use case.
Right. Okay, and outside of packaging, so building materials for sure, then we can like scan them and trace them and see if we can reuse them. And I think that's growing pretty fast.
Yeah.
I think, and fashion is another one that I know of. Any other options? I don't know.
A lot. I think, yeah, food is a big one. I think also pharmaceuticals is also a big one. Cannabis is also being traced a lot. Also, if you're talking about blockchain technology, that's a big one. So we see that coming in. I even see it in just plastic, so not even packaging. Chemicals also being traced, working on traceability of cobalt, also for blockchain solutions. So I think when you're talking about traceability and take also ensuring sort of accountability of the value chain actors for how they do business and collaborate with each other, I think there's really a variety of use cases. Yeah.
I was reading this article today on when they started with product as a service for the bicycle industry in sharing bicycles in China, and the like bizarre amounts of bicycle just got neglected, and like whole bicycle graves of tens and tens and tens of thousands of bikes that just are like built up. And that was all because there was like no responsibility indeed of ownership. And there is a sharing company, but they started competing with each other to indeed have people share these bicycles. Are you worried that at some point other competitors will jump on this idea as well, and there will be actually too big of a surplus of sharing packages on the market, and you have that you're coming into the direction of waste on that side?
Not directly, but I think also what is really important about that network that we're working on to realize is that we're not actually competing with other reusable systems. So we're really trying to actually work together. So really share markets and share an infrastructure so we can enable circularity of the materials. Do I think there will be a surplus of reusable packaging? Not really, to be honest, because I think what really a lot of these reusable schemes are working with is, for example, a deposit scheme, which actually means that users of the packaging pay an additional amount for really renting the packaging. And you're still talking about businesses, and I don't think that they will actually purchase more than they need in that sense.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. Well, and in that sense, in the stage we're in now, it's actually kind of, we kind of want more of these replacements for the single-use variety. But I can definitely see Minou's point that in the future.
I'm just asking it as well because at some point a couple of years ago, everyone was starting to use those using those bamboo cups on like train stations and everything. And I like peeking into like people's fridges and cabinets and everything. And the amount of, for example, doppers and keep cup and of those like multiple use packages that we have right now that we can use over and over in time, people just like sort of forget about them or store them somewhere in the back of a closet, even though of a cabinet, even though there is a deposit on it. How are you trying to tackle this and make sure that people actually bring them back and like take responsibility for this product?
Yeah, I think you can never sort of 100% control it, of course, but we do try to introduce different incentives for consumers to return the packaging. So the deposit is, of course, the key one. But then what we also do is make transparent the impact of actually returning a packaging. So every time a consumer returns one of the packaging that is circulating on our network, they get insight into waste prevented, they get insight into CO2 equivalent reduced. So it's really a sort of immediate insight into what the impact is of their personal choices. So that's an important thing that we try to use to really stimulate and incentivize participation in the system, basically. And then we also have additional incentives, such as a loyalty program in which they can save points, basically, which they can use to get a discount on their next order. And we have this sort of variety of incentives that we use to try to stimulate people to return the packaging. But I do get where you're coming from. I think you can never sort of 100% control it. We do not have a 100% return rate. So there's also a chance that people, keep the reusable packaging in their cupboards. So I think what needs to be done in order to increase that amount is also a lot more awareness. Also, I think it will be good if there would be more information shared on the benefits of reuse by governments and municipalities to really stimulate, really a higher return rate, basically, of the packaging so they can be reused.
That's a really interesting addition to hear you say, but you have all these incentives to stimulate this behavior change from people and to really get them involved. That is really interesting. Do you see, talking about the government and municipalities, do you see them onboarding and getting on board with this idea and taking action on it?
Yeah, actually I had a meeting this morning with the province of South Holland. So they are definitely working on it. But they experience the same issue that we're experiencing, that legislation just takes a lot more time than innovations with startups, and just moving forward as a society. They're always sort of a bit behind, but they are, I know, actively trying to work on different reuse systems and see how they can enable that, and also see how they can play a part, for example, in reverse logistics. Because one thing I really see is that I think ideally we would tap into a lot of existing reverse logistics streams, basically, so we can sort of avoid adding a new logistic stream to the market and to the world, basically. So I think they can really tap into that and see, okay, we are already traveling these locations, and how can we pick up different packaging or other sort of reusable products so that they can be reused. So I know they're actively working on that. So I think that's really good.
Yeah. So you see, we have, I know in the Netherlands, we have an outstanding waste management system. It's very efficient. Is that these kind of parties like the Renewy and those kind of parties that you're talking about, or are there other players in the field that I might not know of?
No, that's definitely a good point, indeed, those kinds of companies. But you can also think about, indeed, commercial companies. So let's say you can hand in also your reusable PackBack container with a picnic order, or with your Albert Heijn delivery. All of these sort of existing streams that are driving around through neighborhoods, if we can try to see and work together to figure out how we can take a lot more products with them, because a lot of them are also traveling a lot with just empty spaces. So I think if we can tap into all those different systems, we can, and that's all sort of part of that shared infrastructure idea, I think we can really optimize the whole reverse logistics process, while not including sort of more wasteful practices in the process.
Yeah, I see what you mean. It's actually interesting. So for the non-Dutch people, Albert Heijn is our biggest supermarket in the Netherlands. And Picnic is an international, I think they're European. So they do deliveries, grocery store at home, basically, home deliveries. And yes, that is actually really clever. They have that whole logistic system in place. And I love how you're looking outside of the boundaries. That is also something very typical of innovation, and like breaking down those silos and looking across from your own industry to see where you might be able to collaborate with each other. Even the postal office, it's like you can go in so many directions with that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see another question from Mickey. Would you like to come on mic, or would you like me to ask your question? Whichever you prefer is fine.
Yes, thanks. Hi. I'm really interested in the blockchain to use for accountability and traceability of packaging. But I wonder, I once went to a supermarket because I knew they were applying this, and I looked up the QR code of that product. But I don't see many people do that. How can we make consumers more aware of this? Are there other ways to capture the attention on the spot, and make people aware of the good thing you're doing?
Yeah, I think it's multiple questions. I think one is where you're talking about packaging that is actually being traced through blockchain technology, and how consumers can be more aware of this. I think that's the $1 million question. I think that's a very big one, because I think a lot of companies are realizing the value of blockchain technology, because I think for the people who don't know, it's actually a decentralized technology that allows you to immutably store data. So that means that if it's there, you cannot change it anymore, basically. So it becomes very valuable in terms of holding actors accountable for how they treat material, and how they basically structure their operational processes, practices, additives, anything they do in the manufacturing process. But indeed, for a consumer, you have a very short sort of attention span in which you want to capture that information, and you can share that, basically that whole data. But I think a lot of sort of concepts are trying to think about how we can make that digestible. So working with a star system, or working with, like, if you scan it, if it's 3 stars, then it's sort of optimally traced, or but I think it's a very good question, which I don't have the immediate answer for. I think it's a sort of work in progress in trying to see how we can make that digestible and create that awareness for the consumer, so they know what they want to look for also in making decisions about what they buy.
Cool. I'd like to contribute to that work.
Cool.
What is it? I'm curious now, Mickey. What are you thinking about? What would you like to contribute? In what way?
Well, I've seen an example of a HoloLens. It might be a bit extreme. That basically projects the contents of the package in the air, like a little bit like augmented reality. So you walk in the supermarket and yeah, you can scan a product, or you walk by and it senses you and you see the information on a HoloLens. That would be great. I think like it's a combination of a gimmick and also yeah, the application of technology behind the product. I think many people don't realize what they're actually buying. Only a few turn around the product to see the nutritional value, stuff like that. Like in the Netherlands, you have this app for keurmerken, certifications of is something organic or not. I think there are like 50 different certifications that you can see on products that nobody knows if they're legit. Well, if you research on it. So yeah, I'm also still looking for the answer here, but yeah, sharing ideas is good, I think. Starting with getting the backside of the packaging to the front. Maybe there are not so many brands who would do that at first, because it's maybe not the most appealing for many people. They prefer nice colors and flashy package front design over what's in it. But yeah, it's a start.
That's a really interesting idea. So we would do that with augmented reality, and like that's next level technology, but very, very interesting. So nice. I have another question for Tina. We spoke about so the players in the system. Usually you have business on one side, you have government, and then you have the financial institutions. So that's always an interesting one as well. So we see within the circular economy that banks and financial institutions are kind of struggling to figure out how they can assess the risk and all of that, because it's a very different business model. Do you have any big investors, or have you encountered that with banks, or how was that for you?
Well, I have not sought a bank loan or anything like that. So I have to say that my experience with that is limited. I do think what we see with these kind of projects is that, you know, in Dutch we say you have to have a lange adem. So it takes a while, right? And it basically means, you know, it takes a while to make these things work. It's not a sort of clear-cut solution. There's not a sort of holy grail. It's not like a supermarket. If I open another Albert Heijn, I can sort of estimate how that will work out. That's just not the case. And it's a constant innovation process. And you have to have financial supporters or investors on board that understand that, and understand that you need to invest to not only build a company but also really invest in creating awareness on what this actually is, and investing in trying to help people understand what this whole new mindset is. And that takes, that's more so a more risk-taking attitude, which you need. So what we really have leveraged is governmental support, as well as angel investors, and really see how this market is developing and are not afraid that they will not get a lot of returns after 2 years. So I think you need those collaborations for it to work. And I think what you correctly said is that banks are just a bit behind on that, and it doesn't fit into their risk analysis structure that they have right now. And for me, that's also, and for us, that's also a reason why we're not really approaching banks, for financial aid. Yeah.
You mentioned government support. Did you participate in like a startup or an accelerator or something like that? Because that's a thing what we usually in Europe, we leverage that quite a lot here.
Well, it was actually a sort of call which was opened out by the province of South Holland, which we got our first grant, because they were part of the Plastic Pact, and they essentially had a sort of call to invest an amount in startups that are really creating circular solutions aimed at reducing plastic production, essentially. So that's what we applied for, and how we got our first grant to run our first experiment this summer.
Okay, thanks. I see that Alex has a question, and Minou mentioned that she had a question as well. So I'd go to Minou, and then Alex, back to you again.
Yes, I wanted to drop in something more from the consumer side. Today I was reading a study on actually something quite far from this, but in the food sector, about how you can nudge or motivate people to try out something new. And in this case, in this study, it was insects. Like, how do you get people to embrace the concept of eating insects as a form of proteins? And you have this as well, like with the car sharing industry. Like we had to go over that hurdle of like giving up flexibility, and with sharing pens or everything, people are like, no, I want a really big wardrobe to really mix and match in the morning what I wear. And with all of these sort of sectors where we went from owning a product to sharing a product, or from a certain type of food to something really innovative, we had these hurdles to overcome. What were these hurdles or these first things that people say, like, oh, maybe not hygienic, or I want to own or reuse the products, or any of that? Like, what was it in this with PackBack?
Actually, a funny question, because our main assumption would be, especially because we got this grant in January 2020, and we were supposed to run the pilot in April, and then what came? Coronavirus. And we were like, oh shit, what are we gonna do? And we actually thought our main assumption would be that people would think it was not hygienic. And actually, no one has commented on that. Literally no one. Like, not one consumer has shared that they are afraid that the plastic is not, or the material is not clean in a hygienic way. I think what the biggest sort of misconception is with consumers before they choose to use a service is that they are afraid that it is complex. So it's what we've been really working on a lot for this past year, is really figuring out how you can very simple, to the point, explain how the consumer can interact with the system, explaining how easy it is basically, and how they can use it, and trying to figure out how we can communicate that best. So that has actually been the sort of biggest, I think, hurdle from a consumer perspective. And I think, well, I know this is something that we are constantly working on. So how can we, on the one hand, make it more easy for consumers to use it, but on the other hand, also communicate that it's easy to use? Because sometimes when a consumer just hears, oh, I have to do something other than just throwing stuff away, it's like, oh, you know, what a big effort, and where do I have to go? Do I have to go all the way back to the restaurant to hand it in? You know, all these sorts of assumptions. So trying to tackle all these assumptions in those few seconds that you have where a consumer decides whether or not they want to use the system is I think, the biggest challenge, and something that we're continuously working on.
Can you give us a few examples of how you are doing it? Is it point of sales? Is it online? How do you do it?
Yeah, so a big thing is the point of sale. So like I just mentioned, we introduced a sort of try it yourself thing with restaurant employees, because they're essentially the ambassadors. And if a consumer asks them, oh, I see this on display, how does this work? And they start with, yeah, okay, we've lost them already, you know. So we have to get that excitement, and that excitement from employees at the point of sale. So they really essentially need to become the ambassadors of the system and really encourage people to use it. So that's a big one. The other one is working with delivery company. So we're working with the largest delivery company in the Netherlands, continuously experimenting different wording also in the delivery process. So that's a big one. So do you say easy reuse system, PackBack system? You know, we've tried so many different things, seeing what works best. Also having reusables as the default option instead of purposefully having to choose for reuse. So those are just different ways in which we try to do that. Also with point of sale material itself, really visualizing it like 1 or 2 easy steps, highlighting the words easy and simple, and just scan this and there you go. So it's a sort of continuous experimentation process, but these are some examples.
Nowadays, we're focusing a lot on making everything very easy and accessible for consumers, and everything has to be like, you know, one snap of the fingers, and it has to be at your door or picked up or like ready. Do you think there are opportunities, or did you try out ways to actually make people so aware that they are willing to go the extra mile, or maybe make an effort instead of making it all as easy as possible?
Yes, I think that's the one hand, because it is an extra step. I think it is an extra step just because it is always more difficult than just tossing something away and don't look back at it. Yeah, so it is always a bit more difficult. So I think it's both, but I do think we just try to be realistic about it. You know, you always have those one or, you know, the small percentage of people that are definitely willing to do the extra mile, even if they have to go 30 minutes by bike to hand in something, they will do it. Those are also the people that participate in bring your own cup bowls, bring your own cups systems, but that's not the majority of people. So instead of trying to design a difficult system and sort of guilt tripping people and that they have to do more, we really believe in the approach in trying to make it accessible for people, not only the very motivated people that are willing to go the extra mile, but also for people that are like, I think it's important. I think I want to be more sustainable. I'm trying to reduce my waste, but it has to fit in my everyday life, and it shouldn't cost me a lot more effort to do it. And that's the majority of people. So we really try to design a solution that is also workable for them. So that is sort of our sort of philosophy in this and our mindset in this.
Yeah, thanks. Minu, do you have any follow-up questions, or if not, I'm going to ask Alex if he wants to pose his question because his hand is still raised.
No, you can go on. I just checked in with this question because I'm seeing it nowadays that it's like comfort and easy access. It's becoming so important. And I think you're absolutely right. That is what the majority of the people wants. And it's also what is really necessary, I think, to make something work and scale up. I just think that like once in a while we can question ourselves as well. Like, do we really have to make everything so easy for everyone? And are we not spoiling society in this sense? Because there are a lot more solutions, a lot more things that have to become circular. And yes, a lot of that we can probably fix with smart technology or great systems and everything. But at some point, we as society also need to change our behavior and go that extra mile.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I was curious if you explored it at all, but it does absolutely make sense that you're going about it this way.
And I did one thing I thought Minu was going to say, and what we both really love is we were talking about this the other day, and I think Minu even posted something on LinkedIn about it, that here in Lisbon, where we are located, we have the Uber, the normal Uber, not Eats, but the cars, and they also have Uber Green cars. So I choose an Uber Green whenever I need to, but I consciously need to make that decision to choose an Uber Green. And it is really, I love how you said that we're trying to make that the share option, the default option, because that is exactly like such an easy thing that you could change. And then instead of, you know, people going the extra mile for the sustainable option, it's the other way around. Yeah. So I love that it was really funny. It just reminded me of that Uber conversation we just had.
Yeah, we actually also have it in the return process. So in areas, for example, in the inner city with some of the packaging, they can be picked up from home with these electric cars. But we also make drop off yourself the default option in returning the packaging. And beforehand, we had it the other way around, which was not a conscious decision, but we just had it like that. And then, you know, we had that same idea as in the delivery process, how to change that. And actually, like, drop-offs increased tremendously because people are just lazy. They don't look into it. Yeah, sorry to be so blunt, but that's the way it is. And now almost everything is just through drop-off containers. So I think those small adjustments really have an impact.
Yeah, I agree. Alex, your hand is still raised. Would you like to ask another question?
Yes, so I'm changing the gear a bit in a different direction of this, but first of all, let me say I find this idea amazing with this package loop. I was more thinking about behind the package loop, there is also a material loop, which ideally one should create. So I was wondering, what materials you're using to create a package, and what happens if those packages are become not usable for the customer. So how do you manage this? Do you try to put it back in some sort of loop? Can we do new packages out of it, or can there something else be done except basically sort of throwing it away?
Yeah, so essentially, yes, the packaging is 100% recyclable. And the producer that we work with also has a recycler. So every packaging that cannot be reused anymore can be recycled. Unfortunately, at this moment, the technology is not there to reuse it into RPP. So recycled food safe RPP. So basically returning it and recycling it back to a reusable container. Technology and development and innovation are working towards that, definitely. But right now it can be recycled. But we also just have some fun solutions in the office. So we have to be honest, it's only 4 containers, I think, that cannot be reused anymore up until this point. And we have one, which is actually our flower pot, which we use. So we have also sort of different purposes for reusable packaging.
Thanks.
All right. So actually one of the things we do, thank you very much, Tina. I was going to say, we're going to go to a little exercise that we prepared. Because one of the things that we always like to do is to get a little bit more interactive. So we hope you are all feeling up for it. And I'll share the Miro board link once again. And Minu already did it. Lovely. I love how we work together as a team. And then I'll call you guys over if you all want to come to the Miro board, and I'll call you guys over. I'll summon you right here. So we prepared an interactive exercise with everyone. So we're going to break you up into 3 groups. And just last week, there was news coming out from Coca-Cola that announced that they are going to prototype a new type of bottle, which is a paper bottle. And we already had quite a bit of conversation around it. People were asking questions. So there in the top left corner, you see an article from Design Week, where the designers really started already questioning, like, is this actually the answer? Or is this just like, you know, is this greenwashing or going along with the hype? And given the fact that we're also looking at circular economy, we felt it would be really interesting to put you guys into 3 groups and have you do a little bit of online research and discuss with each other. So one group will look at the plastic bottle that's now made by Coca-Cola. One will look at the can. And then the third one can do a little bit of research on the paper bottle. And you guys can all have a good conversation with each other and try to build a case as to why your specific product is actually good for the planet. So you can also consider circular options and the material, of course, and all of these things. And then we'll come back and then have a bit of a debate, and let's see what's going to happen and what we come up with. We don't have the answer. This is still something that people are questioning as much as we are. So if you're up for it, then yeah, Minu is going to make some random breakout groups. So Minu, let's see if you can get that fixed. Oh, Ona says I'm only able to listen in. Oh, cool. Lovely to have you here, UX designer from New York. That's okay, Ona. It's feel free to join the breakout group anyway. You can listen in. You can join the chat if you want. You can always ask a bit of questions or join the conversation in the chat, and other people can read what you're saying, or you can just choose to listen in. That's also fine. But we definitely hope that once you're in the breakout sessions, those will not be recorded. So we hope that you can all come on camera a little bit to have a bit of interaction with each other. Does that sound good to everyone? Everybody's like, okay, thank you.
Sounds like a plan. Okay, I'll open the breakout rooms now, and all the 3 rooms have a name: plastic bottle, paper bottle, or a can. And depending on the name of your group, you know what team you're in. And then we see you all in, I think, 10 minutes. Right, Pamela? Perfect.
Yes, 10 minutes, maybe 15. We'll see how the time goes, but we'll drop in the rooms to see how you're going.
See you in a
All
bit.
right, good luck. Have fun.
What?
Tine, wil jij ook mee in een groepje?
Ja, is prima.
Ja, Minou zit aan de knoppen.
Okay, people should be going to rooms, but I don't think anything has happened right now, actually. I'll just, okay, I'm just doing it manually then. Oh. See.
All right. Okay, so now everybody's gone. Wat goed.
No, we have still 2 people in here.
Yep, Peter is also gone.
We have 4 people in the can, 3 in the paper bottle. Zal ik jou even naar de paper bottle moven?
Ik ga heel even plassen. Dan wil ik wel even gaan kijken zo. Geef ze maar even een paar minuten. Dan kunnen ze eerst even hoi, weet je, even landen.
Is goed.
Leuk dit. We doen weer een keer een opdracht.
Ja, leuk hè? Oh, ik stop even de recording. Oh, wait.
Oh ja. Back everyone. We're with a bit smaller group, which was to be expected. Sometimes people are like, oh, an interactive thing. No, I don't want to do anything, but I'm really happy that you all stayed, and I hope you had some really good conversations. So yeah, let's start with team one. Team one, who was on team one, and who would like to share what they came up with, why the plastic bottle should be kept alive and kicking? And
Mickey, you want to do it, or should I do it? Mickey? So I was on group 1. I think that was like the least favorite group, at least my personal preference. So I must say, I find it really hard to find pro arguments for this. So I guess the strongest argument for plastic bottles, if you can make it, and essentially that didn't even came from me, it came from Mino, who made the inspiration, that they have a low carbon footprint. So if you have to carry them from A to B, obviously ideally you don't have to carry them, but if you have to carry them, then yeah, they probably the lightest product of all of them. Then you could make the argument that they're recyclable, but the problem here is, does recycle mean actually, are they going to be used for something else useful, and how often you can recycle them? If you can only recycle them once, then, well, that's not really a great loop here, in compared to glass, which can be recycled basically indefinitely. So these are the two. We were looking into biodegradable plastic, but Coca-Cola is not on the list yet. At least we couldn't find any association with a quick Google search for this. Ideally, my dream would be have a plastic bottle which you can throw in a compost, and after 1 month it's disintegrated. But I don't know if Coca-Cola has the plans in that direction.
interesting thought. That is an interesting thought. Alex, may I ask, what country do you live in, or where are you from?
I'm originally from Germany.
All right. Do you have return deposit schemes in place for soda bottles?
Germany, I come originally from the GDR, which was actually amazing when it comes to recycling. Then the great capitalistic conversion unfortunately vanished all these recycle mechanisms. But we now have much, like they put in place a lot more recycling things. I mean, recycling is wrong. You can basically give back those plastic and can bottles, but I don't know actually how much they're going to be recycled, just that you have this return logistics in place at the moment. So that's what I know about it.
The recycling systems and the deposit systems in Germany are actually quite old. They had them for a lot longer, and I think they already have cans as well. I lived for 6 weeks in Berlin this year, and there is a whole thing there that people just leave their glass bottles, beer bottles everywhere. There's of course the beer drinking cultures, and they just leave them behind in parks, and they will never be there longer than 10 minutes because people who are trying to get some extra money, they will collect all the bottles and return them to the right places. So there seems to be a system in place. With the plastic cans, it's the same, although I would not know indeed how high the percentage is of actually recycling this then. And to come back up your first comment, indeed, plastic is in the transportation lower in carbon emission than glass. And glass is very heavy. I'm not sure if it is actually lighter than cans. I think it actually is not indeed, although I have understood that cans in the production are very high in CO2 emission. And that's the thing with all of these elements, like what problem do you try to solve? But I don't want to jump ahead on that. I just want to clarify that they're definitely lighter than glass, but I'm not sure about the other elements.
Yeah, and from what I heard in your team, you said it yourself, you weren't really happy that you had the plastic bottle. So that must have been quite interesting to make a case pro the plastic bottle.
Yeah, I think I didn't succeed. At least I'm not convinced of myself to make the case, but then again, I think somebody else has to judge it. Yeah, it was difficult, and I think I have to put a lot more effort into it. I think personally it's a great challenge, but I think my motivation was just very low. Because it feels like arguing for the devil, so it's a bit like difficult. I just one point about plastic and can. I would consider the density of plastic as sort of lower than for can, but again, you need less material overall for a can. That might be the case, which I don't know. I don't know the producer.
That makes sense. Cans are maybe the shape-wise better, more denser in transportation. Okay, we're doing it again.
Let's ask Team 2.
Let's ask Team Can. Yes.
Hi everyone. I think I'm the last left from Team Can here. Not sure. My partners had to go. But yes, it seems like we're looking for the lesser evil in these three options. For sure, cans produce way more carbon footprint during the making of a can and extraction, but their life cycle is around 60 days, which from the short time I had to do the research, I feel like this was the quickest I noticed. And the best part is they can be recycled all the time. I checked that around 70% of people in the States recycle cans, compared to 3% of the people who recycle plastic bottles. So maybe cans are more, they have done their work well to be positioned as bottles that can be easily recycled. So I feel like they can be, if the company is making another efforts to erase the carbon footprint from making the cans, maybe they can be a good option. Also, to add on top of everything, they're super sufficient for space and for transportation. They're light and they can be they use less energy for the liquids to be chilled, to be cooled down, and also they are safe. They're food-wise, they're safe. Of course, if you're not carrying life cultures and probiotics, they're not good for kefir for sure. But for liquids, they're the healthier option compared to plastic bottles for sure. Basically, that's what our research showed so far.
Very interesting. Does anybody have any questions about that? Because you found a lot of really interesting points.
Yeah, I'm very interested in cans in general and in sustainability. I'm working on a little kids book for sustainability, so I knew part of it from before, but also this research helped me to make the comparison between the different materials.
Very interesting. I see Alex has a question.
Yeah, first of all, great work in that short amount of time. I'm quite impressed.
Thank you.
I was just wondering, of course, we know that plastic is toxic or can be toxic, some materials. For metal, I mean, you do release some metal in the liquid, especially if you have carbonized. And I just wondered if any one of you guys know about this has been studied. I mean, it says here there had been no foodborne illnesses. I'm not saying of illnesses. I'm talking about sort of accumulation of basically residuals in the body, which can be still harmful. I'm just wondering.
Yeah. It's a smart question and definitely worth digging into for sure. I will check it later. What I know is that it's safer for food. I have no idea about particular poisoning and material being accumulated in the body. It depends on the liquid. I know that metal is not good for interaction with probiotics, with life cultures. Drinks like kefir or kombucha, they're not a good option to be in cans. For drinks like Coca-Cola, I don't know, in general, I would doubt the healthy of Coca-Cola. So whoever buys it, it's like you're accepting that you're getting something that's not very good for your body. But I'm curious if brands like Oatly, they choose paper bottles, there must be a reason that to be the best option. Of course, then the question is like, are paper bottles easily recycled everywhere? Like in the States, are there machines that can deal with that type of paper, which is very different from paper the way we know it, because it has some kind of flashy layers and extra materials to make it endurable and lasting.
Maybe let's ask Team Paper Bottle. Maybe they found something on this.
No one wants to go from the paper team? Already talked a lot. I'm hoping someone else from my team can take it up.
Someone, Team Paper Bottle, still online and wants to. Maybe you can keep it short if you still have some words left in you, and we will hop on as well. I think Pam and I both read the articles on this bottle the last couple of days, and
okay, cool.
Got it as well. So
yeah, so looking at this paper bottle, so paper has a lot less emission in the production process versus fossil materials like plastics, for example. So I think that's definitely a good contributor. Paper is also, of course, recyclable and renewable, which I think is very good. Also increasing consumer awareness. However, I don't think it's necessarily the best option, but I think it definitely creates a consumer awareness that there are alternatives and challenges consumers to sort of think outside the box and out of their comfort zone. So I think that's definitely some good parts of it. Something not added here, but it's of course very light, so that also reduces the impact from transport, which I think is very positive. What I do find challenging with the whole sort of recyclability discussion is that I think it's very important that we make a separation between what is recyclable, what is being recycled, and what is actually being recycled and transformed into new products. Because I think those three steps are very, very different. And I think also talking to paper recyclers myself, a lot of the recycling rate is often made up from what is actually collected and brought to recyclers, but that doesn't necessarily mean that indeed everything is converted into new products. And a lot of times paper is contaminated, but it does add to the recycling rate of a country, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's being recycled. So I don't necessarily think that paper is the best option, but that is basically our case for paper.
No, that was what worried me as well when I read about this paper bottle. I think Petja already mentioned it briefly. Is that there is a plastic lining, of course, within the paper, so the paper is for sure contaminated. And like, what can you really do with it? And yeah, what are the recycling options? So yeah, the differences between the three steps are very important, and we have to be absolutely more transparent and open about that. I would say also communicate that more on the packaging so people can actually make an informed decision. For me, like I did some digging into this bottle as well, and to be totally honest, I would also find it quite hard to make a case for this, especially because with the resources Coca-Cola has and the distribution systems and the technology possibilities they have in place, I think they can surely come up with something better than a paper bottle, and definitely something that is better for the environment, or even circular if possible. I mean, we have been working for years already, like I don't know since what, with like in America it's very common, those soda machines, the soda systems where you can actually just work with reusable materials and reusable packaging. And I wonder why that is not more discussed. did any of you come up with like a circular solution other than the machines, the soda machines that already exist? If not, then I think we have to.
I also see a few people who have questions. I don't know how to pronounce your name because it's in Russian in my screen.
Yeah, yes. It's Polina. Sorry for that.
No worries, Paulina.
Okay, just wanted to mention that when a company wants to be more environmentally friendly, they usually choose paper as alternative to other materials. However, it's really hard to control at least in Russia and in some other countries, I believe so, the sources of the timber, and to check if it was really recycled or is it new, because the system is quite complex.
Absolutely. I think that is often the difficulty. Companies, and especially it is the same in Europe as well. Companies come up with solutions that are decomposable, recyclable, any of those things, but our waste management facilitation systems are actually not built for it. So, for example, there are those decomposable spoons, and they're like, okay, decomposable, 100% decomposable, but they actually need 12 weeks in a waste management facility, where in most of Europe we only do 6. So yeah, so the waste management facilities cannot really do anything with them. So they still will just go with the load that probably gets burned, and then you're maybe even farther away from home.
Yeah, and there's a lot of misconceptions about waste management itself. Like pretty much everything that ends up in landfill will produce methane, even if it's organic material like food waste or anything. It will still produce methane. Whereas if you put it in a composting pile, it still will, but it will be used in a different way. So the separation and doing all of that is also very, very, very big challenge. I think we're gonna wrap up in a bit. I see Alex still has one final comment or question for us, and then we'll go back to Tina and wrap it up.
Yeah, I was just, yes, thanks for giving me the opportunity. So I was just wondering, we know there are biodegradable plastic and paper combining with biodegradable plastic. Wouldn't that be an interesting option? Does anyone know about this kind of combination? Because biodegradable plastic might not be always optimal for durability, but in combination with paper, it might be or carton, it might be not bad.
Well, I know something that I found that I actually think is really interesting is are these, maybe you're talking about the same thing. It's the packaging material that actually degrades and has an expiry date just as much as the product that's inside of it. So you would get like a single-use mayonnaise package, but the mayonnaise package will also have an expiry date, and it will be completely organic waste, if you will. So probably biodegradable, as you say. And there is another interesting startup that they produce water in a biodegradable, so in a swallowable plastic edible container.
Oh yeah, I heard about that. Yes, I remember.
Yeah, so these kind of things are also very interesting. So to make the packaging like more in tune with the product that's actually inside of it.
It's actually also more natural. That's what nature doing as well. I mean, a banana comes in a banana peel, and a mango in a mango peel. Like more back to that. Well, we mentioned it as well. I think like going back to materials around food that are actually closer to either organic or maybe even edible, because that just makes so much more sense instead of wrapping things in materials that are toxic. There are definitely a couple of startups working on this, although I would say that it's very, very early stage before this comes mainstream in like supermarkets, and then you're going to have this whole issue of food hygienic and safety, and then the moment you put it in a supermarket, it might have to be wrapped in something else again, or that's a difficulty as well. There is that disbalance between what is possible and what does legislation allow. We'll get there at some point.
We'll get there. Anyway, so yeah, it's already past the hour. So amazing that you guys are all still here. I really hope you enjoyed. Tina, I would really like to thank you for all your wonderful words and nuggets of wisdom here and sharing your story. Any last conclusion words or anything you'd like to share with the group before we leave?
Well, I would definitely like to thank everyone. It was definitely nice, hearing your questions, but also brainstorming in the groups and sharing thoughts. I think it's definitely interesting. And we don't, as PackBack, pretend that we have all the answers. We really don't. So I would actually want to invite everyone, if you have some cool ideas or want to contribute or just want to share thoughts, please feel free to reach out and come think with us on how we can improve the system even more. So we're also always open for that. I think, a few things that have been discussed also today. I think you raised the question, Minu, also, shouldn't we just try to also motivate consumers to just behave differently? And I think that, I do agree with that. And I think we also need to try to stop plotting linear solutions with circular mindsets, like these sort of biodegradable things that are supposed to improve circularity, that doesn't really contribute to the whole idea that we need to change the way we think, and we need to change the way we interact with materials and change the way we think about materials. But I think a lot of everyone here has a similar mindset to that. So I just really look forward to talking with everyone again and brainstorming a lot more.
Yay. Well, it was really awesome to have you here tonight. And great. Thank you for the invitation for all of us to think about it with you. I might take you up on that because it's been something on my mind for years, and I'm in Lisbon now and have a similar situation as Jennifer had when she came to Stockholm. So I am actually considering getting something off the ground here.
Please come, please.
Yeah, who knows, but then again, so much other things to do, but yeah, this was already so much of an inspiration. And thanks to everyone else who participated tonight.